Hi everyone, you're about to see my video on my final impressions on Candlekeep Mysteries, the latest D&D 5th edition book. The video itself, I was fine with everything, the way that I recorded it, but I did forget to mention that this was a book that was sent to me by Wizards of the Coast. It's normally a little disclaimer that I do at the beginning of the video. I did mention it in my first impressions video, which this is a follow-up to. But I still want to make sure that it's completely transparent from the very beginning, that this was something I received as a review copy. So, with that said, this book was sent to me by Wizards of the Coast for the purposes of doing some review videos on. The Wizards of the Coast is not paying me. They are not dictating what goes into the review. They're not pre-screening the video. They're not influencing the video in any way, shape, or form. The opinions that I express in this video, as always, are 100% completely and totally my own genuine opinions. So I just wanted to sort of get that little bit of housekeeping out of the way. And with that said, I hope you enjoy the video, which is my final impressions on Candlekeep Mysteries. Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be giving my, I guess you'd call them final thoughts on the Candlekeep Mysteries book. A while back I did my first impressions video. It was about a week or so before the book actually released. At that time I was intending on doing an actual a review video afterwards, but one of the issues that I found myself coming up against was that most of the opinions that I expressed in the early impressions video were pretty much the same way that I felt after spending time with the book, so I didn't want to be too redundant, especially since the early impression video was still getting quite a few views at the time, so I just felt like it was sort of overly redundant. But now that a little bit more time has passed, I feel it's time to sort of, I guess, give my final impressions. I'm not going to go into specifics about the stories and the adventures themselves, at least not in this video. If you want to see me do reviews of each of the 17 scenarios inside this book, let me know. That's something I can definitely look at doing over the course of the next little while. But I just want to sort of give my opinions on the overall product, as well as address some of the comments or concerns that I had seen from people in leaving comments in my early impressions video. So if you haven't watched that video, I do recommend it. There will be an icon you can click on at the end of the video that will take you there. So you can watch that if you haven't already. But basically what Candlekeep Mysteries is it's an anthology collection of 17 short scenarios. They're basically designed to be run as one-shots, so they're really, each scenario only has a few pages dedicated to them, but you do get 17 different ones, which gives you, it's from level ranges 1 through 16, so each scenario is for a specific level, with the exception of level 4, which gets two scenarios, and then every level after that up to 16 just gets a single one. Overall, the scenarios are pretty well written. I haven't come across any that I didn't like or I didn't care for the writing style. Each of these scenarios is authored by someone different. So most of the time, in many of the cases, these are written by individuals who are sort of new to being published in D&D. They'll be taken from the larger community, so they could be individuals that are streamers, podcasters, some are sort of like freelance writers. So you do get a pretty healthy mix, but you do also have a couple of mainstays from the Wizards of the Coast company that are also presented here, including Chris Lindsay, who is someone that's been around at least. I remember watching videos of him doing playtest, running playtest sessions for D&D 5th edition when before that came out. And you also have Chris Perkins being heavily involved as well. He has written one of the scenarios that's in here, which also feels like a little bit of a potential sneak peek at the upcoming Ravenloft book. But he's also credited as helping to develop several of the other adventures in here as well. See if I can find an example of that really quickly, because I think this is one of them. So yeah, so it was written by, so this one here was written by Allison Hong. I hope I pronounced that right. I apologize if I didn't. But you can see it was actually developed by Hannah Rose and Christopher Perkins. So again, I think they sort of had the basic idea or premise or outline, and then Allison ended up writing and filling it out and putting their own spin on it, which is awesome. So you do get, like I said, Chris Perkins is credited as developing several of these scenarios, even if he's not the actual author. The central premise is that the characters are basically traveling to the location of Candlekeep, this massive library with a very sort of eccentric location within the Forgotten Realms. This was also the setting, or you started your journey in the Baldur's Gate PC game way back in the day. So for a lot of people, there's sort of this weird sort of nostalgic connection to Candlekeep, and it's nice to see it actually sort of get its day in the sunlight, or get some shine on it, basically, because it is a really cool location. So the characters are at Candlekeep, and they can come across these books. Each scenario, because it is designed as sort of a pick up and play, or something you can just drop into an ongoing campaign. Each one will have suggestions on how you find the book, or reasons why you might be looking for it in the first place. So for example, the Book of the Raven, you could find this at Candlekeep if you are doing research on the Vistani, or trying to find ways to enter the Shadowfell. And then it also gives you some other suggestions as well. So it always gives you a good sense of why you might be looking for this, which again is really, really useful to have. So like I said, you get a fairly interesting collection of adventures. Like I said, I don't want to go too much into spoiler territory here, but there's some really interesting ones. There's situations where you have to go into, demi-planes to look for individuals, such as a scenario where you're trying to find a member of the Harpers who had been corrupted by an evil artifact and locked away in this demi-plane by the rest of the Harpers. The characters are hired to go in and administer a cure to him, while at the same time a beholder has sort of dreamt its way into that location, and has sort of taken things over, and just how the player characters have to try to deal with that. There's other ones that take them to Anarok Desert. There's ones that have them going through Baldur's Gate, locations near the city of Waterdeep. There's also one like this one here, so the Shashim's Bedtime Rhyme, which revolves around the children book that slowly drives people insane. So there's a lot of interesting scenarios. One of the more interesting ones was a scenario where there's actually a plot to try to launch one of the towers in Candlekeep into space. So yeah, there's some pretty interesting off the wall kind of scenarios here. But like I said, they're all really well developed. Actually, there's the Spire rocketing into space. It's such a different scenario. It's something that I don't think I would have ever really seen in a D&D book. So, like I said, you get some really different scenarios, and it's kind of nice and refreshing to see, all the different things that you get here. So this is just an awesome book. So in my early impressions video, I was pretty high on this book, and I still am. This is an excellent collection of scenarios that you could just pick up and play. They're ideal for running one-shots, and I know with today's modern climate, or things that are going on, the need or the desire to run one-shots is sort of higher than maybe it was in the past. You get a lot of online groups that maybe can't get together for regular games, but have a few pre-gen characters handy, pick up one of these scenarios, and you're good to go. This is also a great book for anyone who, even if you're homebrewing your own campaigns, if you have a gap, for example, or just a point in your storyline where you don't know what to do, or you just want something to fill some time while you're developing the next major part of your campaign, you can easily pick up one of these as well. For the lower level scenarios, it could be really easy to do just with the starter set. You could have the characters from the 5th edition starter set, and you can just run them through some of the scenarios that are in here. So overall, this is a very, very useful book, and I actually really do like the idea of having a whole host of individuals write these shorter scenarios. So you do get some different writing styles. You see some different creatures that you may not necessarily see a lot in other 5th edition books. Like you get like Meanlocks, you get this this fungal lich. There's just a lot of, like I said, a lot of interesting characters all throughout, and a lot of interesting creatures all throughout. So this is something, like I said, that I do highly, highly recommend. And this is a book that I recommend to any dungeon master that's out there, and I hope that this is just the beginning of a series of anthology collections that Wizards of the Coast can do. Each one maybe having its own theme, like this one here, sort of based around mystery, so the characters have to sort of solve what's going on or get to the bottom of certain situations that they may find themselves in, whether it's trying to, find some books that morph into monsters when someone reads them, how that happened, or going to an extra dimensional pocket to try to find an eccentric wizard. There's just all kinds of different little mysteries that are sort of the central theme here. So you could easily do ones for just short wilderness adventures, or like maybe a short side trek, like little mini dungeon crawls. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with this, but this is a book that I really do feel that even people who don't run published campaigns, I think could get a lot of use out of, because this isn't meant to be run as a cover-to-cover campaign book. It's just meant to be used as you see fit, based on just drawing scenarios out of it and using them when you want to. So you may not want to use the first through third level ones. You may just want to use one of the fourth level scenarios. You may want to use the 13th level scenario, and that might be it. But there's a lot of NPCs, maps, plot threads, all kinds of great stuff that can be taken out of this book as sort of fodder for your own creativity. So this is one that I do highly recommend. And like I said, I think it's great because with Wizards of the Coast, with 5th edition in the past, they have focused mainly on, with the exception of 2 previously released books, but the majority of everything that they've released have been dedicated, longer campaign books that they were releasing sometimes, 2 a year, which makes it really difficult to try to get through all of them. And not everyone's a collector, so there may be situations where you only want to focus on the adventure you're currently running, and you might miss the one that comes out in the interim, and then just move on to the next one that catches your attention as it's coming out brand new. But with something like this, you can just pick it up, have it on the shelf, and just pull it off the shelf at any point in time, and drop it into your ongoing game, or like I said, just organize a one-shot for it. So I think that's, again, overall, this is a really fantastic book, and a really positive sign, I think, of hopefully, things to come. I would love to see more of these. One of these a year, I think, would be fine. They don't have to go overboard. There's plenty of room for a long-term campaign and books that are just short collections of anthology adventures. But this Candlekeep Mysteries is basically the closest thing we have to modern day modules. And, each one is sort of designed as its own standalone adventure. Now, some of them will, obviously reference locations in the Forgotten Realms, because it is the default setting for D&D 5th edition. But back in the day, some of the modules were specifically set in Greyhawk, or, other locations that you could easily modify. And that's something that is definitely the case here as well. So yeah, I recommend it. That's basically the big spoiler for this video, is I do highly recommend this book. But when I did my early impressions video, there were a few comments out there that I saw that I just want to take a moment to respond to. I did try to respond to them actually in the comments section as well, but I just think that maybe having them in a video might be a little bit helpful. So there's only a couple ones that I really want to touch on. But the first one is, someone saying that it basically just reminds them of a more expensive version of Dungeon Magazine. And I think the person was trying to use that as sort of a derogatory statement, but Dungeon Magazine was honestly one of the best things going for D&D 3rd edition and 3.5, especially back in the day. I collected Dungeon Magazine from the moment I discovered it up until its final physical print run, and most of the time it was honestly the most anticipated thing that I was getting every single month. More so than the actual D&D books, was just getting, Dungeon Magazine. Dungeon Magazine was a super useful resource for dungeon masters. Having the scenarios that you could run, or you could cherry pick ideas out of, it was just a great resource all around. And to compare this to Dungeon Magazine, I think is fair, but to try to say that that's a negative, to me, really misses the point. This is meant to be sort of like a toolkit kind of book. And you can draw from it what you want. You can run the scenarios that you want. There's going to be a little something for basically everyone in this book, and that was what Dungeon Magazine was. and they're both awesome. So yeah, I mean, I love Dungeon Magazine, and I really enjoy Candlekeep Mysteries. So yeah, again, I think that that was intended a different way, but honestly, it's a great comparison because they're both great products. Another one, the most common thing that I've heard people say is that they don't want to buy the book because it doesn't have an appendix at the back that has all the creature stats collected all in one place. And that's sort of interesting because remember with like 3rd edition and 4th edition D&D, when they moved to having tactical encounters, they didn't have appendixes either. They had the actual stats for the encounters in the encounter section of the book, which was at the ends of the different chapters, or the end of the different scenarios. And that's what you get here. Each of the 17 scenarios, if they introduce new creatures, will actually show where those creatures are listed in the table of contents, which, even when I use the appendixes, I will honestly usually go to the table of contents first anyway to find out exactly what page it's on, and then go to that in the appendix. So to show what the new creatures are, NPC stats, or the new monsters that are put into the book, you will see that certain ones will have an asterisk next to them. For example, you can see like the Meanlock there, the Were-Raven. So all the new NPCs or monsters are clearly marked by an asterisk in the table of contents, and it tells you specifically what page they're on. It's, to me, I wouldn't deny buying this book solely based off of that. It seems like kind of I don't want to say petty, because I don't think that's fair to the people that, like the appendix system in the first place. But I think it's sort of a short-sighted reason not to get the book in the first place. Again, keep in mind, in a lot of cases with the appendixes, those are creatures that you fight sometimes regularly throughout the entirety of the campaign, so it doesn't make sense to have their stat blocks in one specific part of the book. Now, you'll have your important NPCs and stuff in the appendix as well, and I do understand that, but because a lot of the monsters are meant to be used all throughout, there's a reason why they're there. Each of these scenarios were designed, I would almost dare say, in isolation of one another, and I don't think there are very many examples of new monsters or NPCs in one scenario appearing in any of the other scenarios in the book. It just makes sense that they're going to be posted with the scenario itself, and it's always at the end of the scenario. So it's always in the same place when it comes to, where they are in the adventure itself. So for example, with the Joy of Extra-Dimensional Spaces, it'll give you the different monsters there that are included. The only one that doesn't appear at the end, I think, is the Swarm of Animated Books, which you fight early on, and I think you can fight more than once, so they want that stat block relatively early. But again, the Were-Raven is at the end of the scenario, the Meanlock's at the end of the scenario. So they're always in, sort of towards the back of the actual scenario itself, which is where it sort of makes sense for it to be. And again, a lot of cases, I know myself personally, I always look at the table of contents to find the page that they're on anyway. So it just means you have to, flip through maybe less pages than, going all the way to the back of the book. Or, it might be a little slightly more inconvenient, but again, they are also very clearly marked. So if you're looking for something specific, it's going to be super easy to find it there. So again, I would hope that, that wouldn't be a reason to stop someone from getting this, because it is, to me, it is sort of a minor thing. And again, I think back to books like the Expedition to Castle Ravenloft, or like some of those other Expedition series, some of the other modules that Wizards was putting out towards the end of 3rd edition 3.5, where they had the tactical encounter system, where you didn't have any creature stats in the adventure itself. As you're getting into like room descriptions, they were all at the end of the chapter where you encountered them, and they would have like the maps, they would have the like rules information for the locations that they might be in, and they would have the stat blocks there. So they were never at the back of the book either. So, it may be a modern convenience that you're used to, but please don't let that be the sole reason that you overlook getting something like this, because again, it's such a useful book, and it's something that I think, I don't want to see any book do poorly. Absolutely, I don't. Even my least favorite adventure is one that I hope, sells well enough to justify the amount of effort that was put into it, because people worked hard on it. This is something that deserves to succeed as well, just like any other book, but I hope it does more so, because if this does well, then we can see more of these anthology collections, hopefully, in the future. So it's one of those things where, as consumers, you vote with your wallet, and something that is, just drop, plug and play, basically, pick up and play, just drop into an ongoing game, is something that, I would love to see more of. So again, the appendix thing, maybe they'll do that in the next one, maybe not. Again, you're not having any overlap with the creatures, so they're not appearing in multiple scenarios. So it makes more sense for them to be with the scenario that they're a part of. And again, these were all written by, individuals, and this was written like during the pandemic. So you wouldn't necessarily have everyone all in one location to write these. So they would just send in the adventure, including their NPCs or their monsters, attached at the end of it. And it just makes sense to sort of format it that way. So, try to get past that, because it is still easy to find, super easy to find whatever creature you're looking for. Just go to the table of contents and you can find it there. The last thing that I want to address is the gimmick of Candlekeep itself, the gimmick of the books themselves, and this is something that is just deeply connected to the Forgotten Realms. Honestly, even though these books, the books that are in here, are obviously the driving force behind the scenarios. The descriptions on why you would be going to the Candlekeep location in the first place, the reasons that you'd be researching, that you would end up stumbling across the book, those could be used as plot hooks on their own. You don't even necessarily need the book for most of the scenarios. Some you do, some you don't. Like the one with the children's book, for example, that is rather important to the story. So that's one that you would need, but that could be found anywhere. As far as the ability to just drop it into any ongoing game, again, that would be super easy to do. You don't necessarily need Candlekeep. If you want to use the books as the physical objects, instead of just using the adventure with a plot device to get them there differently, then you could just have them find this at any sort of library for any sort of like research segment of a campaign. Most campaigns will have situations where the players go to a large library to investigate. So you could just drop it into any one of those. They could find it in someone's manor or personal collection. So there's all kinds of different ways to introduce the books if you want to do that. But again, a lot of the scenarios you could, sort of drop the book altogether and just be able to use the setup, the premise, and go from there. And I think it'd be really easy to adapt to your own personal campaign. You just have to drop the names of certain places, like Baldur's Gate, for example. If you're running Eberron, for example, you may want to set it in Sharn rather than Baldur's Gate. You may want to set it in like the city of Greyhawk if you're running Greyhawk, or some other things like that, or just whatever large city that you have in your own homebrew campaign. But as far as adaptability is concerned, I really don't think it's going to be all that difficult to do. Like I said, there are very few scenarios where it felt like you couldn't remove it from the Forgotten Realms, and I think they were designed that way as well, to try to be as useful as possible, because not everyone wants to run games in the default setting, which is something that is I would suspect Wizards hopefully knows by now, because even though they use locations, again, like to go to Andorok, for example, all you have to do is just go have a desert that may be where a powerful mageocracy may have existed sometime in the past, before the desert claimed everything. So it's easy to adapt everything is what I'm trying to say. So overall, Candlekeep Mysteries is a fantastic book. If you want me to do reviews of each of the 17 scenarios, let me know in the comments below. If I get enough interest in that, then I will do my best to make sure that I get that all completed. I know I haven't been uploading a whole lot over the last little bit. I've been sort of dealing with a lot of issues with headaches and stuff. Recently made some pretty drastic changes to my diet, so I think it's just, my body's having difficulty trying to adjust to all that. So it's slowly getting better. So yeah, if you want to see the individual adventures, just let me know, and I will do reviews for each of those. The last thing that I just want to mention, of course, here is the map itself. So you get the map of Candlekeep. This is a map that pulls out of the back of the book. It is only single-sided, so the other side doesn't have anything on it, it's just blank. With my particular copy, I did run into a bit of an issue where there was glue from the binding that has sort of spilled out onto this back cover page. As you can see, this part here is a little bit crooked, so you know, when this book was put together, there were a few minor issues, nothing serious enough that, you know, I would try to return it or anything like that. It did kind of suck because this was the first time I was pulling one of these maps out, and it actually went really, really smoothly up until, you know, I started hitting the parts where the glue was. It's only in this particular copy, so the special edition version that I have, I looked at that, and the map was, you know, completely loose from the back, so there was no glue that had it stuck in place. But at the same time, I also, you know, want to keep that one fully intact, so I'm stuck with a map that's slightly damaged, but, you know, again, minor thing, but it is cool to have the map of Candlekeep on the to come with the book itself. Anytime you get maps included, I'm excited about it. It would have been nice if the other side would have had maybe like one of the cellars or sort of an inside, you know, view of like the Great Library. But again, it's you know, it's still a really decent map to have overall, and it does again really remind me of like the Baldur's Gate Baldur's Gate PC game. So so there you go. So that is my final thoughts, or I guess my my impressions of Candlekeep Mysteries after having spent some time with it. Let me know in the comments below if you guys ended up picking this book up yourself, if you've used any of the scenarios in it so far, if you run them as one-shots, if you drop them into your campaigns. I've seen stories of people diverting one of their ongoing campaigns to throw in a scenario from this book and then put them back in the scenario that they were doing. So just let me know if you've been able to do that with your groups, and if you've been able to use this book. So once again, thank you guys very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.